Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Wos, aka Wosny Lambre, and I'm joined as always by my brother on the west side of Los Angeles, California. What's going on, Nando?
Yeah, it's been forever, dude. I miss you.
Same.
The people are clamoring for us to come back. It's mostly my fault. I
People.
apologize. So
It's all good.
yeah.
It's all good. Last time I saw Nando, we were watching Heat at what's that shit called? The New Beverly.
The New Beverly.
Cinema.
Yeah, Tarantino's theater.
He curates the movies. The dude that was moderating the event said that it was his personal print of Heat, which I thought was pretty fucking cool. That we were watching Quentin Tarantino's personal print of Heat. Just an incredible experience, like watching that in the movie theater. That fucking bank robbery scene,
dude,
bruh.
It's so sick.
That experience is crazy.
Yeah, just the loudness of the gunshots and
nuts.
Dude, I just like De Niro and Pacino going at it, like just going full ham.
So good.
Pacino just on one, dude. Like he was just on one.
She's got a great ass.
So good. So good, man.
And your head is up in it. All right. Anyway, man, we wanted to get into a couple of things because same old stuff in the news, obviously. Still a lot of war, death and suffering happening in the Middle East.
Yeah.
The situation in Ukraine, like I guess the Americans and the West thought that Ukraine was going to be this little engine that could defeat the Russians. It seems to not be happening. They're not on the precipice of a victory over there. So there's that. South Carolina primary is happening in the Republican primary contest. Nikki Haley's about to get waxed in her home state, which is kind of nuts, but such is life. And yeah, man, what I really wanted to talk to you about, Nando, because I don't know if you've noticed this shit, man, but like some pretty prominent libs are publicly hitting the panic button on the Biden situation. Jon Stewart in his comeback basically said, yo, Biden looks diminished. He looks old. This guy does not seem ready to take on the task of a whole ass presidential campaign. David Axelrod been killing this guy for like a year now. We know he was the architect of Obama's campaign, his chief of staff or whatever he was over there. A big Democrat.
And a really smart political mind. Axelrod.
Yes.
Like he's a lib, but he's better than most, and he really is, and he's really sharp. Yeah.
Yes, he understands the game. He plays to win. And he's looking at the board and he's like, yo, this guy's not a winner. This is not a winning proposition. Like this guy is just vastly diminished from what he was in 2020. It's just true. So Ezra Klein, he put out like an emergency podcast, another big Democrat, like the type of guy we're talking about. Like this guy was like the public mouthpiece of Obamacare. Type of shit.
Ezra Klein is probably the most influential liberal commentator.
Period. Okay. He's not on board with this shit. Ezra Klein is now going against the Democratic Party orthodoxy as far as the presidential race. Nate Silver. It's just like, and Nate Silver is not even the type of cat. He fancies himself as somebody who's kind of calling balls and strikes. He's not really wading into the whatever, but like obviously he's just like, yo, these measurables right now are fucking horrible. And the idea that you just watch it and let it happen is crazy. And I just think it's wild that so many people are willing to publicly go against what the Democrats are trying to do with Biden right now. I mean, like that has to mean something, Nando.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, they're panicking. I mean, they're panicking and rightly so, because Biden is in fucking deep shit. I mean, his poll numbers are atrocious. Biden is losing Hispanic voters to a Republican. I mean, you can't win if that happens. Like, it's just not.
That's insane.
Hispanic voters are the largest ethnic minority in the United States by far. and it's like the Democrats always win, like handily. I think before this, the closest a Republican got was when George W. Bush got 40% of the Hispanic vote in 2004 in his reelection campaign, because he ran on immigration reform. He ran on a comprehensive immigration reform that was actually quite, sympathetic to the undocumented and things like that. He got 40% of the Hispanic vote. Yeah, and like Obama's like racking up 80%. It's like, it's just, if you lose the Hispanic vote, you lose the White House. If you're a Democrat, you can't. There's no path to victory. Especially in key states like Arizona, across the American, New Mexico, things like that. But even like there's Hispanics everywhere in America. That's like it's so that's a huge problem for him.
Thanks, Spain.
yeah, exactly. He's also bleeding support amongst young voters, mostly because of Gaza.
Of course.
Like he's bleeding support amongst the young, in under 35 voters. Like again, just key part of the coalition for any Democrat to have a prayer at the White House. He's obviously in trouble with Arab American voters, which is not a huge ethnic minority, but are
in key states they are.
In states like Michigan, which is a huge swing state. There is a pretty large Arab American population there. And he's getting fucking waxed, obviously, because of Gaza. And so like the issues are obviously the war in Gaza is killing him because he comes off as weak, and his age, it just looks really bad, dude. Like today, did you see this? Today, he confused Navalny's wife, his name. Like he met with Navalny's widow. Navalny is the Russian dissident who died in a Russian prison. Her name is Yulia, and he kept on calling her Yolanda.
He's cooked. He's cooked.
He's cooked.
Again, I was so to get back to Ezra Klein, he put out an emergency podcast. I'm subscribed to his shit. I try to listen when he has interesting people on. And he basically put out an emergency pod about why the Democrats should just nominate somebody at the convention. Yeah. And he played clips. He said, yo, I'm going to play you guys clips from his rallies from 2020. He was not this. He just wasn't this diminished. This is a different guy. Like, we need to stop ignoring this fact. And then he, juxtaposed it against some more recent Biden clips, and it's fucking horrible. And it's just such a lack of vision. And here's another thing too that I'll say. It's not that voters are rejecting the Democrats out hand, right? Like they keep winning these special elections and whatever. Like it's not the Democrats that voters have soured on. So I say that to say the powers that be could be like,
that's very true, by the way.
The powers that be if it was about the Democrats, it'd be like, yo, all of us are getting killed. There's no reason to not go with the incumbent, yada, 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 right? That would be the talking point that they would use. That's not the case. It's isolated to Joe fucking Biden. It's obvious that this guy is bad. People have completely soured on him. And again, I don't know why they think voters are just so stupid. I don't get it. Like, even if you want to say people are low information, we know the rules of engagement. This is why I don't feel bad for them either. They know what the rules of engagement are. It's essentially a beauty contest. It's essentially a popularity contest. It's essentially a charm off, if you will. You have to go on a charm offensive. You have to get people riled up to rally behind your cause. And your candidate has to be the face of that. He has to be the one selling that case. And if you have a guy who's unattractive because he can barely fucking talk and he's so clearly diminished, then you're not doing the game right. We know the rules. Like I was using the example of when Richard Nixon got his ass kicked by John F. Kennedy, right? And before TV played this big role in presidential politics, like it didn't matter that he wasn't as good looking, as well spoken, blah, 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 blah. He had all of these credentials. He was obviously more qualified, and he thought that would carry the day. But John F. Kennedy on a debate on TV just wiped the floor with him and was just hot. Americans wanted to fuck him. And so that vastly helped him, right? And you could, and Richard Nixon was like, yo, I didn't know these were the fucking rules, right? You could say that, but like the Democratic Party can't say they don't know what the rules are. They don't know what it's like. They know, and yet they're still going with this. What's your best guess as to why nobody can push Biden out?
Well, the Democrats are extremely subservient, to the party structures and the party power. They don't have a culture of internal challenging, the power structure. That they really don't like that. They've stamped that out. I mean, they if you think about how viciously they attack people like Ilhan Omar or AOC whenever they step out of line a little bit. I mean, they snap into line immediately.
Like there's no Matt Gaetz in the Democratic Party.
Exactly.
Right? Like how Matt Gaetz is always getting under some Republican skin. That does not exist on the Democratic Party side.
No, because even the Squad, which the Democratic Party treats like they were like, essentially
lepers,
kind of internal terrorists or something, like are pretty subservient, really at the end of the day. And so there isn't a culture of internal debate within the Democratic Party. There's also a big problem the Democratic Party has is that there isn't anyone with any sort of popular legitimacy to mount a counter argument. Like in the biggest example in I mean, I don't want to say recent history because it was 45 years ago at this point, but when Jimmy Carter was president and he started instituting neoliberal reforms and moving to the right and, doing all that good stuff, there was a guy named Ted Kennedy who was a senator who had a huge...
He was a lion of the Senate.
Lion of the Senate. He was a Kennedy, and he had the stones and the popular legitimacy and to challenge him in a primary as a sitting president. Like, no one in the Democratic Party has that right now. Like no kind of middle tier person. Like the closest is probably someone like a Gavin Newsom, governor of California. But he's not gonna the party apparatus.
Not in an overt way. He's not doing it. Remember, he was the party apparatus.
Yeah, in a way, he was
in his little kind of sneaky, cute
positioning
way.
himself. Yeah, he was positioning himself like if something happened to Biden, because Biden could drop dead tomorrow.
Yes,
like, would you be that shocked?
easily.
Like he could literally just fucking die. Like he could just go to sleep and never wake up. Like that could happen. It's impossible to think that. It would be ridiculous to think that that's impossible. It's hard to imagine like a president dying because it hasn't happened in our lifetime.
It's never happened.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, not our lifetime, but like just dying, right? Not like what you would call John F. Kennedy, who didn't just die. He got killed by the CIA.
The fucking Cubans, babe.
It's hard to imagine. I'm working. All right. Sorry about that. Go ahead. It's all good.
But that could happen, and so I think Newsom was just kind of banking on if that were to happen, that he wanted to position himself as that he could be like the guy waiting in the wings, in case they didn't trust Kamala, because like they clearly don't trust her. I mean,
she's a disaster.
It's comical. Yeah. And so there just isn't that. And so like even someone like a Newsom, who's clearly extremely ambitious, always has been, he's not going to do anything to really rock the boat because these party structures for fundraising are so nationalized and they're so like, it's just like a giant organization at this point. It used to be like a Ted Kennedy, he kind of had his own source of power, like his own voters in Massachusetts. He didn't really need the party for anything,
Right.
And now that's kind of different. So I think that's the big reason why.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a single Nobody even makes themselves into a thing, by the way, right? I think it's somebody like Newt Gingrich who like went out of his way to make himself into a national figure. There are no Democrats who do that. Not in any meaningful way. They what's his freaking name? Oh my God, why am I drawing a blank on this dude's name? The dude from California. Fuck. He was like the head of the resistance when Trump got elected.
Oh, Schiff?
Yes. So that's a
Russiagate
guy,
man.
Russiagate guy. Yes, Adam Schiff. So like when Trump gets elected, he's like making himself at the forefront of the resistance and all of that shit, right? And so, you know, he's got a little national recognition, or he had to be, because especially when you consider how much oxygen that shit got with cable news types. Like this dude was on TV all the fucking time, but he was doing it in service of this bullshit Russiagate. He wasn't doing it in service of some cause or some constituency that he represented. He was just doing the Russiagate dumb shit. Right? Like, now try to imagine a Democrat who made themselves into a national figure by championing something that a bunch of Democrats cared about. You know, like he made himself the face of, you know, student loan debt or something. Not to say that a bunch of Democrats, but, you know, just something. There's nobody doing this. There is nobody within the party apparatus doing this. And so, look, I don't want Joe Biden to die. But if he did drop dead tomorrow, like they would have to run a really rushed primary process. And I think that would be great.
They wouldn't. I don't think they would.
They would just nominate somebody at the convention, or you think they would just run Kamala?
I think they would just run Kamala. I think they would just run Kamala. They can't organize a primary. Like it's too close. Like, I mean, the Iowa caucus already happened. You know, putting that all together, like
can't do anything without Iowa.
That's why Ezra Klein isn't suggesting a primary. He's suggesting nominating someone at the convention because it's kind of late. And it, you know, and at the convention, like, I mean, not nominating the vice president would be kind of hilarious, but so anything could happen. But, you know, the one of the things I was thinking about is that one of the main reasons why Obama beat Hillary in 2007 in the Democratic primary was because he didn't vote for the Iraq War. Mm-hmm. You know, it's unclear whether he supported it or not because
it was a differentiating factor.
Huge, because Hillary was at the forefront of selling Iraq to the liberals.
She refused to walk it back.
I know. She was just like, well, I just think Saddam Hussein was a really bad guy. So Obama was clean in that sense. And I think that running someone like a Newsom or whatever, you know, not that I like Gavin Newsom, I'm just saying like someone kind of like him, a governor or whatever, you know, someone who isn't stained by the Gaza thing, you know, would help him a lot with like young voters and Arab American voters, like could come back to the Democrats if that were the case. Like it's just hard for them to vote for Biden when they see the atrocities every single day on social media and the American president's like, yeah, we got to keep doing that. You know, like that. I think it's hard to like. I think that's a huge factor in Biden's collapsing poll numbers because, like, you know, it really has happened in the last 3 months.
And you know what's funny? I'm reading about Nikki Haley's. You know, she's making her case to the New Hampshire, blah 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 blah, man. And I'm like, you know what's funny? I think the only reason Biden even has a chance is because he's going up against Trump. I think if the Republicans ran like a fake moderate conservative like Nikki Haley, all of these thirsty ass suburban reactionary ass Democratic Party people, Johnny come latelys, would gladly vote for Nikki Haley. Gladly in a second over Joe Biden. They would lock those people in like this. If the Republicans had the stones to run that shit. I mean, I shouldn't say the stones. You know, it's so funny too. And I know I'm all over the place with this, but like hearing the Dems panic and you know, democracy is under threat, and not the Dems, the Libs, democracy is under threat, and Trump, and I'm like, yo, you know what's so funny about the Trump panic is like this is actually democracy at work. This guy has a legitimate he's got legit popularity actual American citizens want to vote for him and see him be the leader of this country. That's democracy. It's democracy you don't like, but that's democracy, bro. He's in a primary
and
right
they're
now,
trying to
and he's
remove him.
kicking everybody's ass.
Well, and they're trying to remove him from the ballots. I mean, that's
undemocratically,
because they're afraid. Yeah, because they're afraid of democracy. You know, like
it's hilarious when they make that case.
Yeah. No, I mean, and listen, the other factor that I was thinking about a lot, you know, outside of the stain of Gaza on Biden, to a lot of Democratic voters, is that if you nominate a generic Democrat, it's pretty obvious to me that the issue of Roe v. Wade would really be the decisive factor in winning it for them. You know, Biden's kind of so unpopular that I think it's overwhelming that issue. But if like someone could just kind of, you know, some generic Democrat that wasn't offensive in any way, didn't have any particularly strong, like the fundamentals of the electorate are with the Democrats. You know, we saw that in 2020, in the midterms. Sorry, in the midterms of 2022. You know, we saw that that the Republican wave that we expected was blunted mostly by the issue of abortion, you know, and that Democrats just kind of won more than it was expected to because of that. And I think that that's pretty obvious. And I think Biden is so deeply unpopular that it's overwhelming that issue. But if you got someone in that wasn't unpopular, wasn't necessarily popular either, but, you know, people that issue would come back to the forefront and it would really hurt Trump.
Yeah, and also stop with the. I'm tired of every single day. Well, actually, the economy is doing fucking fantastic, and Biden needs to run up the economy. And blah, blah, blah. It's like, bro, GDP is not a measure of how everyday Americans are doing. The stock market is not a measure of it. Yes, there's been some wage gains.
Housing costs.
Yes. And that shit is expensive.
Those keep going
up. It's expensive as hell. And there's not a single Democrat on the planet speaking to those problems right now, especially not no damn Joe Biden, right? The GDP, gross domestic product, is a stat that pertains to the people who own our economy, not us who participate in it. It's not a measure of our success in the economy, guys. It's for the people who actually own it. So, like, when all of these fucking idiots get up there and say, well, Joe Biden isn't effectively explaining to Americans that they're doing fantastic right now. It's like, it's so condescending, so stupid, so fucking lib. It's just perfect. Last thing I wanted to get you out of here on, Nando.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to get you out of here on, Tucker, and I talked about this on Ethan's podcast, so forgive me if any of you guys heard Ethan's and are listening to this, but Tucker Carlson went to Russia to do an interview with Vlad Putin, which I thought was pretty fucking dope, honestly. I think it's important. Not that I like Vladimir Putin. I'm not a fan of his, although he came off kind of impressive. I'm just saying, like, it's important for Americans to know who this guy is, the views that he espouses, like what his ideology is, that he's not some fucking cartoon character. He's not like Lex Luthor, y'all. Like even if you disagree with the basis of the art, like if you disagree with the argument he's making, it's not a completely insane and ridiculous argument. So whatever, get that out the way. But Tucker Carlson's like on the trains in Russian, like, oh, these are pretty nice trains and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like kind of participating in Russian propaganda, which is just fucking hilarious to me. But man, Vlad Putin sat down, man. You want to talk about making somebody look like a mental midget?
Yeah.
Putin, man, he's a guy, Nando. Like a guy, a legitimate guy, dude.
I mean, did anyone think Vladimir Putin? I mean, anyone who thought Vladimir Putin was some dummy is sadly mistaken. I mean,
out to lunch.
You don't do. You know, he was an intelligence agent. Like he was he came up through the KGB and then the FSB. Like he's not fucking, like he didn't come up,
Bro, Tucker,
Tucker Carlson was doing takes for fucking magazines,
Like, bro, like you are not on my level at all. And I just thought like his sort of giving Tucker Carlson a history lesson and just like making him understand his side of it, and ultimately being like, yo, I'd love to come up with a peace deal. I'd
Yeah.
love to. Is there a single, have you heard one single American in power say anything about peace in Ukraine?
No.
Like, do they even
No.
talk about it as a goal or an objective to stop this shit? Or
No.
should we just keep writing checks to Lockheed Martin?
Yeah. No. No. I mean, listen. Vladimir Putin's obviously like a very bad man,
Yeah,
but he's
he's a
no
monster
dummy.
for sure.
And I just think that one of the benefits of the Tucker interview was there's this problem that happens a lot in American media and American culture, whereas that you don't really ever hear from the official enemies. And so then it becomes
Right.
easy for them to become cartoon villains,
Yeah.
which then becomes easy for them for the only justification is like full on violence, like because you can't deal with these people, right? Um, and I mean, this is true of North Korea. This is true of Venezuela. This is true of, insert enemy regime here. You know what I mean?
Remember when we were
That
at dinner, Nando, and you were like, they were like, Nando, tell them about this crazy thought that you have. And you were like, yeah, I think every nation should have a nuke. And people were like, what the fuck? Are you crazy? And I'm like, honestly, I agree with that. It's not just that me and Nando agree on it. It's just like, bro, like, first of all, a
yeah,
bunch of our enemies have nukes, and guess who's the only person that's ever used them?
yeah, the United States. Yeah, yeah.
It's just like this
I mean,
idea
it's a
that there are
semi-trollish argument, but yeah, it's a
no,
semi-trollish argument, but because obviously, like, in my heart of hearts, I would love like total
nobody
denuclearization
to have
of
nukes,
the
of
yeah,
course.
exactly. But if they're going to be there, the imbalance of countries with nukes and countries without nukes is a huge invitation towards violence, and the fact that North Korea has a nuke means that North Korea will never be invaded,
Period.
and whereas Gaddafi willingly gave away his nuclear program in a deal with the United Nations, and then he was killed by the United States,
Yeah.
and so
No, I just think it speaks to this idea that there are these different kinds of human beings in other countries who would
yeah,
behave so much more diabolically and less
psychotically, and
rational
yeah,
than we
they would
do
commit
here in the
suicide
United
essentially.
States. Yeah, it doesn't make
Yeah,
any sense to me. Like, there are people who can read a situation and make sound decisions just like we claim to be able to do it. Like, it's just this. That's why I think it's important for Vladimir Putin to quote unquote have a platform to like be like, yo, here's my, and Tucker Carlson was going after him, kind of was like, yo, what the fuck? Like, why'd you invade this country? Blah blah blah. Yeah, like he was
yeah,
semi-combative. This wasn't just a he just was just he's just not on the level of a Vlad Putin. So it's just like, yeah, like he clearly knows nothing about Russian history. Like he clearly knows nothing about the sort of mindset of a Russian person and the people of that region and their cult. Like he clearly has no understanding of that. So he couldn't effectively, counterpunch what Putin was throwing at him.
yeah.
But man, yo, watching that shit, I'm like, yo, Putin is a fucking boss.
Well, I mean, he's got command. He's got a certain. I mean, comparing him to Biden is wild, right? Because like Biden can't get through a sentence, and Putin has like total command of the situation. Like that's the image that he projected in that interview. I encourage everyone to check out the latest episode of Radio War Nerd podcast, which is one of the best podcasts in the history of mankind.
Okay.
And Mark
I'm not
Ames and John
subscribed, but I'm
Dolan.
about to get on there.
You should get on it. It's fucking great. Their latest episode on Navalny kind of goes through the whole recent history of Russia,
Radio
and
War
Putin
Nerd.
and Navalny. The Radio War Nerd, yeah, it's incredible. And I mean, it's just when you listen to something like that. I mean, Mark Ames lived in Russia. He ran a magazine called The Exile in Russia. Like he speaks Russian perfectly. So he's an American, but he understands Russia and knows Russia well. Hearing him talk about Russia and Russian politics and Russian history, it's just like you realize the information that you get here in the West about Russia is completely filtered through what I would call this kind of official enemy lens, in which there's a complete and willful misunderstanding of basically everything, and this kind of cartoonish depiction of the official enemies as these kind of bloodthirsty, crazy people. And like, you know, there are violent people in Russia. Putin's a very bad man, but like, I mean, I don't know. The United States does all kinds of violent shit that to the outside world looks heinous, and to us, we've just kind of absorbed it. So,
I
highly recommend people check it out.
I will say this, and over the years, my view of our quote unquote enemies, which is China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Those are basically the four bads.
And Venezuela.
And Venezuela and Cuba, quite hilariously. This is just hilarious. That's just a ridiculous thing to say. Like Venezuela,
Nicaragua is one of them too. Sometimes,
yeah. I've over the years come to see those countries more favorably than I previously did. Just understanding it's not just what we do abroad, but also the people who we call our best friends, meaning the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Israelis.
Yeah.
Like, why are they so much better than Russia and China?
Yeah, they're not good.
And Iran. Show me the proof that they're way better than them.
Yeah. I lived in China, so I feel a certain authority to speak about, you know, how China is depicted.
CCP spokesperson over here, folks.
Yeah, this is my CCP propaganda. But no, I mean, just beyond that, I think that there's a image of China in the West as these kind of automaton, obedient, you know, massive people that are just kind of in the, you know, whatever Xi Jinping says, like that goes.
Yeah, they're under his spell, and blah, blah, blah.
And it's just like, it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, these are pretty anarchic people. Like, they don't like to follow rules. I mean, I don't know. It's a completely opposite depiction. Like, I see it all the time. I'm like, you guys have no idea. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, this is just not my experience with Chinese people at all. Like, you know, it's completely backwards. So, I mean, if you extrapolate that to every single other country, which I'm sure it's true, you know, you get a picture of how distorted things are for us.
Yeah, and obviously we don't support the regime in Iran or whatever, except for the fact that they whooped America's ass. I mean, I support that. They got the damn Yanks off of their freaking necks somehow, miraculously, and they haven't they haven't gotten over that shit since. They're still pissed about the revolution.
They're still pissed. They're still mad about it.
Still pissed about it. Still. Yeah. Right. Same with Cuba. Like, you know, just the idea is like, wait a second, this used to be our shit. We used to own this. What the fuck? You don't get to have your own country. Anyway, I encourage people who haven't seen it yet to go check out the Tucker Carlson interview, because it's so fucking hilarious. Just how he just gets bodied. He just gets smoked by Vlad Putin. Yeah. And it's the first time I've ever watched Putin speak. I've never watched an interview of his before. Yeah. You gotta assume any other interview, he's probably doing, you know, Russian media, which we know is just propaganda for the most part. Yeah. So whatever, check that shit out. Make sure you become a Patreon. We're doing new OG pods with the gang, me, Tom Haberstroh, Amin, Trey, motherfucking Zach Harper. That's why you see the big Zaz there. We're doing the Zaz show with me and Zach every single Wednesday, talking NBA on there. So doing Patreon exclusives on that. So make sure you guys lock into the Patreon, patreon.com/count the ding. Shouts to my man John Gervais, keeping the trains running on time, man. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.